need an intro. Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Crohn's Chat. I'm Lindsay, aka the Crohn's Ranger, and today we're talking about sepsis. What is sepsis? Well, for those of you that don't know, it is a life-threatening condition that arises when the body's response to an infection causes damage to its own tissues and organs. More than 200,000 people a year are affected by sepsis. Of those 200,000, I am not sure how many have Crohn's or colitis, but in the Crohn's and colitis community and other chronic diseases, the chance and risk of sepsis is very high. There are 3 stages of sepsis. There is sepsis, there is severe sepsis, and then there is septic shock. Each one of those is categorized by an increased rate of symptoms that are life-threatening. Any infection can lead to sepsis, but most common are pneumonia, kidney infection, abdominal infections, and just regular old bloodstream infections. I don't know a lot about the semantics and stats and more medical side of sepsis, but I do have personal experience with it. I dealt with sepsis not once, not twice, but 3 times. And each time I was lucky enough to walk away with my life. I had these 3 incidences during the time when I had my implanted ports. And they all happened within about a year. All of this happened in the early 2000s. I had implanted ports at the time because I was getting IV nutrition to keep my weight up. And through those ports is how I got all 3 of my infections. After each one, they removed the port and replaced it with a new one. With the 3rd infection, they didn't want to take any chances, and so they didn't put in a new one after they removed the old one. And after they did that, I was told the reasoning behind it is because if I got sepsis again, there was a pretty good chance that I would not survive it. The 2nd and 3rd one, by then we already knew what to look for, so they weren't as big of issues as the first time. Each time it was like a 2.5-week stay in the hospital with a PICC line in and tons of antibiotics. Now, the first time I had sepsis, I almost died. It was very close. My symptoms started very subtly, like they do. High fevers and chills, uncontrollable shaking, vomiting. I couldn't keep anything down. It was like having the worst case of the flu ever. And that's what the doctors thought it was. They just thought I had the flu. So I sat at home for over a week with a septic infection, thinking it was the flu. By the time I got to the hospital, I was in such bad a shape, they got me to a regular room and tried to take my blood so that they could run cultures. I was shaking so hard, they couldn't get a needle in my arm. That was when they decided to admit me to ICU, the intensive care unit. I was in intensive care for almost a week, if not longer. My memory is a little fuzzy because I was pretty out of it. They had me on a lot of pain medication and a lot of other medication to just keep me calm. The doctors told my family if I was able to survive that first 24 hours that I would probably make it. But that first 24 hours was really bad. I had fluid in my lungs, which made it very hard to breathe. They had me on oxygen 24/7. I could maybe say 2 words without having to suck in a giant breath, as deep a breath that I could take. I couldn't get out of bed at all, so I had a catheter, all that fun stuff. Several of my organs were enlarged to 2 and 3 times their size. And I remember at one point, I was delirious because I had such a high fever. I didn't know what was going on and I was just talking like a mad person. But I do remember this. I remember I don't know how long I'd been there. It wasn't very long, maybe a few hours, but I remember my whole family, my parents and my brothers and sisters standing around my bed staring at me, and the thought was going through my head, is this me dying? And things just, like, it was like looking through a pinhole, like the blackness just started coming around my vision until it was just a pinhole, and then it was black. But then I woke up. I didn't die. I woke up, and I fought extremely hard to survive that first sepsis infection. And it's probably was the scariest thing I've ever gone through. At least one of the more scarier parts of my medical history. There's a lot of things that you can do to prevent sepsis. Especially those of us on biologics, we have to be very careful with our bodies. But the biggest thing is to know the signs. Like I said, any infection can lead to sepsis. For those of us with Crohn's and colitis and other chronic diseases, anytime you get an infection, even if you don't think it's serious, let your doctor know. Call them, send them messages, show up at their office, whatever you have to do. It is not something to not take seriously. My body still has permanent damage from that first bout with sepsis. My lungs still aren't what they should be. The reason it was so hard to breathe is because the cells in my lungs were liquefying and filling my lungs with that fluid. I'm not making this video to scare anyone. I'm just trying to share more of my story and my experiences, and to really stress the issue that if you even think you have an infection, call your doctor. It may be something small, but something small can turn into something big very, very quickly. That's gonna do it for this video. Please check out all my other ones. Also follow me on my social media accounts. I'll put all the links in the description below. And if you'd like to become a patron, I now have a Patreon, and would love your support to help me make bigger and better videos. And if there are any topics you'd like me to cover, just put it below in the comments. I love you, bye-bye. Hey everyone. Hey everyone. Ugh, that was weak.